You guys ask a lot about interview questions, what to expect in an interview, how to prepare for an interview. So I wanted to give you my best advice, and I also have a list of actual interview questions that I was asked in my interviews before I started my first year of teaching. Hi, my name is Chelsea from Teaching in Pearls, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. I am a 4th year kindergarten through 6th grade music teacher in Cincinnati, Ohio, but my first 2 years I spent teaching 6th through 8th grade choir at a different school district. So not only do I have a lot of experience with interviewing, I also have experience with interviewing when I already have a job, and when I was in college, I interviewed for every job possible. I graduated from Kent State University with music education in 2015 and landed my first job in April, so like 2 months before we were graduating, which was the biggest stress reliever ever, and I'm so grateful for that. But I have already presented at a conference a couple years ago. It was a session titled "What to Expect When You're Expecting Your First Year of Teaching," and I co-present that with my friend Alice. But today I want to summarize a couple of the points for you guys, because these are questions I get a lot, especially on Instagram, which if you don't follow me, I'm over on Instagram on Teaching in Pearls. Over there, I'll put a little plug. You guys ask a lot about interview questions, what to expect in an interview, how to prepare for an interview. So I wanted to give you my best advice, and I also have a list of actual interview questions that I was asked in my interviews before I started my first year of teaching. Okay, so let's start with just the process of getting a job. So how to set yourself up for success to best get a job. So number one, you always want your resume to be 2 pages or less. If you only have information to fill 1 page, that's completely fine, but do not make it more than 2. Believe me, when I started writing my resume, it was like 5 pages, guys, because I had done a lot of service stuff. I was really involved in stuff in high school that I thought my employers might want to know, but at the end of the day, you need to bring it down to 2 pages because your future employers have a lot of paperwork to look through and they're not going to read past it. So pick what is very most important, or summarize things as best as you can and get that into 2 pages. If you would like an example of what my resume looks like or how to write a resume, comment below and maybe I can do a whole video on resume building, because that's something that I'm just really interested in talking about, but that's a whole other tangent. Also, throughout college, really build up your resume material, because that's going to be your big talking point when you're in interviews. So ways I built up my resume material, and I have my notes here from the conference or the presentation I presented at the conference a couple years ago, so that's what I'm looking at. I was involved in the Ohio Music Education Association, which anybody could have been involved in. It's a state organization through NAFME, but I was involved at the collegiate level, and I also was involved on the collegiate state board. So I was one of 5 collegiate representatives for the state of Ohio, which is so cool. If you have the opportunity to apply for something like that, that looks amazing on resumes. I also was in Delta Omicron, which is a music fraternity. I received music scholarships, which I listed on my resume, and other things that weren't music related, because your future... Okay, I want to clear one thing up. I don't usually pronounce the word like future, although that's what it sounds like, but I'm getting over being sick, but you guys really wanted this video now, so I tried to film it even though I still am sinusy and congested. But every time I say future employer, it makes me cringe. So before anybody comes in the comments, I know it's future. I usually pronounce it correctly. I have a cold, okay? Employer doesn't necessarily want to see that all you do is something in your field. So I also mentioned that I was a part of Greek life. I was in Phi Mu sorority. I did a lot of volunteer projects. I did 2 honors projects. One and these were honors projects, so I got honors credit, but I didn't get paid for them. They were volunteer. One time I took it upon myself as an honors project to build an after-school music program for this one apartment complex. That looked really good, especially when I was applying to urban schools, because that was an urban clientele I was working with. And also just volunteered to teach some private lessons here and there to people in college or people preparing for things, just to help myself and give myself resume building experience. Literally all through college, I took every opportunity I could possibly get my hands on so that I could add it to my resume. I'm not even kidding you guys. It is so worth it to get out of your comfort zone and try some random stuff out so that you can add it to your resume and help yourself stand out at an interview. And also, a lot of this sounds like a humble brag, but I kept in my personal stuff because it helps you get an idea of how my interviews went. And B, if any of you are still in college, I'm trying to give you a few ideas of other ways you can get involved before you graduate. When you're at networking events like teacher interview days, if your college does that, or music education conferences, or whatever kind of conference, this isn't music specific really, but if you're at any kind of networking event or somewhere where you might meet a future employer or a connection to a future employer, always carry business cards. You can get them for really cheap nowadays. You can even make them yourself. I got my business cards through Vistaprint the first time, and I just made them very vague. I put my full name, I put a very general email that they could contact me at that I had created specifically for like adulting. I put what my bachelor's degree was going to be in, so I didn't put like college student because I wasn't going to be a college student in a few months, you know, so you don't want to buy all those business cards because usually you have to buy like at least 100, and it's really hard to get rid of a lot of business cards. I still have some back in college, but yeah, have them on hand. It makes you look so much more professional. Practice, practice, practice any and all interview situations. If you're student teaching, ask your principal, ask your assistant principal, ask anyone if you can have a practice interview with them. Usually they want you, well, not usually, they always want you to get a job. You know, when you're student teaching, if you're doing a good job, they want you to be successful. So I did a practice interview with 2 of my student teaching principals because I was at 3 different buildings for student teaching. I did a practice interview with the music teachers I was working with. I did a practice interview with one of my professors. Anybody who would let me, I did a practice interview with, and it was really great for answering questions under pressure because you can practice questions all day, but until you're like under that pressure, you don't know how you're going to react, so you need to be able to react on the spot, which comes with practice. If your school does something like teacher interview day, I know up at Kent State every year they bring in like 60 school districts and you can apply for as many as you want. So you bet I applied for almost all 60. The only thing that I factored out were locations that I was not at all familiar with in Ohio. I was like, I can probably find a job in Cincinnati or up near Kent. So I didn't want to do Youngstown or Bowling Green or something else that I wasn't super familiar with. But apply for as much as you can. If there's a teacher interview day, participate, show up, be professional, and have an open mind because you never know. A school or a district or something that might not be of interest to you might end up being your dream job. Look your professional best for interviews, but don't look like you're playing dress up. So look professional, but don't look like you're playing dress up. Don't wear heels you've never worn before. Don't like get all dolled up to the point where people are like, is this a fashion show or is this an interview? Look professional, but it's okay to be understated. I usually dress sort of like crazy sometimes for a traditional teacher. If you watch my vlogs, you see like I love to wear bright colors, and like right now, like what am I even wearing? You know, this is just me. But for interviews, I'm gonna tone it down. So I usually wore black slacks. They were usually more fitted, but not like, they weren't boot cut, they were just straight fitted slacks, and just a nice flowy blouse and a bun, or curled my hair, something nice, and pulled it down my face so I wasn't playing with my hair the whole time. Usually a bun is a go-to in a professional setting for me because if you know me and watch my vlogs, you know I touch my hair way too much. It's a bad habit. I'm trying to fix it. But wear something that you feel comfortable in. For example, one time I wore heels that I wasn't necessarily super comfortable in and ended up having to walk like 6 blocks to my interview because parking was really odd and it was in the middle of an urban city, and yeah, it was crazy. So don't make my mistake, and don't like bring, you know, don't bring all your stuff in with you. Bring the minimal. If you're a girl, bring like a little, if you want to bring a tiny little purse to have your stuff in and just carry your portfolio or binder or whatever you have your information in. If you're a man, if you want to bring your briefcase or whatever, if you want to bring a purse too, I don't care, it's the 21st century, but you know what I'm saying? Like, don't bring your backpack and like all your things into the interview because you want to look professional, and professionals don't bring all their gear with them to interviews. One main thing I would suggest to you that caught me off guard in one of my early interviews was that at the end of almost all interviews, I was asked if I had any questions. So always have questions prepared because there's nothing worse than being like, no, okay, have a good day. Like, have something prepared, even if you just want them to reiterate something that they've already explained. So even if you come with a list of questions and they answer all of them, just have them like repeat something, not straight away just have them repeat something as in to the point where they're like, were you listening? But you know, if you want to have something reiterated and be like, I'd like some clarification on that, they just appreciate you seeming interested, and saying that you have no questions or any concerns or anything doesn't show that you're interested, because if you're a new teacher or a new teacher to the school, you're gonna have questions. Also, have really original answers prepared for the super basic questions like, what are 3 adjectives to describe yourself? Or why should I hire you? And I can't tell you what those answers are, and by telling you what I said, that's a disservice to you, because they really should be original to who you are, and my answers would not be your answers. But really take some time to reflect, and if that means asking your family and asking your friends, how would you describe me? Like, what are 3 adjectives that you think would describe me? So that in an interview, if they ask, say, well, I actually asked my family and friends this the other day, they're gonna be like, wow, you're actually like self-motivated and like want to better yourself and know about yourself. Like, that will help you stand apart. So take some time to really think about yourself and what value do I add to this job? Why am I the good person for this job? And I promise that you have something that you can bring to a job that no one else can. And it doesn't matter if you're brand new, if you've been teaching for 45 years, like, you have some sort of value to add to a situation, whether you believe it or not. But for that interview, you need to believe it. Another big tip for the interview is to bring a notepad with you so you can jot down questions, or I guess an iPad would work too, just make sure sound is off and all that stuff. But I'm all pro technology, I love my iPad, but bring something so you can write down any questions or things that pop into your head, because number 1, it shows that you're engaged, and number 2, you won't be leaving with a bunch of questions, because you don't necessarily want to leave an interview and then send an email with 50 questions after, because you should have just asked in the room when they were there. I promise you, if you don't bring a notebook, you probably will forget, because nerves will get to you. Even if you have a brain of steel, there will probably be something that slips, so just write it down. They will appreciate you taking the time to think, and to think before you speak, and to write your questions down ahead of time, because I promise at the end of the interview they'll leave some sort of time for you to ask questions or just casual conversation. And be prepared, because you never know what your interview panel looks like. I've been on many job interviews, and also I've been on job interviews where there's been like multiple rounds, to the point where I had to teach a class once. So you never know really what the experience is going to be like, but try to remember everybody's name in the room so that you can thank them with their name, thank them for your time, always give them a firm handshake at the beginning and at the end, and just be a nice person. Like, come off as someone that they would like to spend time with, because at the end of the day, if they're hiring you, even if it's someone higher in the district that's hiring you, they're gonna have to see you, and they're gonna want to see someone who's positive and excited to be there and wanting this job, not someone who's just like doing it because they have to do it. Also, be prepared for the unexpected in interviews. I've had interviews where I had to, this is like music related right now, I've had to play the piano, like sight reading, I've had to bring a prepared piano piece, I've had to bring a prepared choral piece, I've had to sing for them, I've been asked to sing my favorite folk song off the top of my head. So seriously, be prepared for everything, especially if you're a music teacher, because sometimes the people leading your interviews are musicians, sometimes they have no idea, and they'll just want you to do something musical to prove that you know what you're doing. So be prepared for any situation. But I will tell you that in my first job that I got as a 6th through 8th grade choir teacher, I butchered the piano portion, and it really was just because I wasn't prepared. I didn't know that was going to be part of the interview. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like immediately my head's like, piano's not my best thing. Oh my gosh, I can't do this. But like, I tried my best, and I like laughed, and I was like, I promise, like I could practice and be better. Like, I didn't like freak out and cry or be like, oh, this is so hard. I was like, I promise, like I could do this if I had a little bit more time. And they could tell that I was figuring it out and that I wasn't going to be a complete lost cause. But seriously, be prepared to be thrown into some crazy situations during interviews, because sometimes they just want to see how you react. Will you cry and break down, or be like, I can't do that? Or will you get up there and try and smile and make the best of it? Now, the part you have all been waiting for. I have 17 questions, and sort of, some aren't really questions, they're more like talking points that I was actually asked in interviews. One of my professors asked me to gather up all my questions as I was interviewing so that he could use it for a future music as a profession, or I don't know, some like intro music education class. So I have all of these from actual interviews, and yeah, I'm excited to share them with you. I will list them all in the description below. Some are music specific, but honestly, most of them are not. So most of them you would probably hear in an interview, whether you're music or whether you're not. I interviewed for jobs from K to 12. So I've been all over the board. My licensure is K to 12. So I interviewed for high school jobs, I interviewed for middle school and a lot of elementary school jobs. I have taught at the elementary level, I've taught at the middle school level, and I've taught at the high school level in my 4 years. So these are all across the board questions that you could probably expect in an interview. Number one, a lot of interviews started off with things like describe your past experiences, any experiences with children, and any teaching experiences. So for those questions, I usually talked about how I was a nanny, how I worked at a daycare, how I worked at a summer camp, how I worked at a preschool. Yes, all of my jobs, other than one small summer job, revolved around children. That definitely helped in interviews because it showed that I was like seeking out jobs with kids so that I could become a better teacher in the future. And I always mentioned that I chose those jobs so that I could be a better teacher and have experiences with different kinds of kids in different kinds of situations. As far as teaching experiences, you can obviously talk about your student teaching if there was any. Try to remember any big good projects or any performances or anything big in student teaching and talk about that, because that's something you can really take ownership of. But also anything in college, like big performances. Did you travel somewhere to perform? Or I don't know, for people who aren't music, but I know for music often we'll have opportunities to go abroad. People find that very interesting. Number two, I was asked, what is your best quality as a teacher? And I don't remember what I said, but right now in an interview, I would probably tell you that my best quality as a teacher is the ability to be adaptive. So I'm able to change lessons or change routines at the drop of a hat. And that comes with both experience and that comes with both patience and understanding that not everything's gonna go the way it plans, but being adaptive is something that interviewers love to hear. Number three, this question caught me off guard the most of all my interviews. They said, describe a situation that didn't go well for you and how you wished it could have went differently. Yeah, so they wanted me to tell them something bad and how I fixed it. And I'm 99% sure they didn't want me to be like, nothing's ever gone wrong, ever. Because like realistically, that's not legit. And I unfortunately am not going to share that story on here because certain people might watch it and it would sort of be about them, but essentially it boiled down to an issue within an organization that I was a part of in college and how we dealt with having to move about some leadership roles. So anyways, I was just talking about how hard it was to have to basically be in charge of peers and how uncomfortable of a position that was, but how it taught me growth in leadership. So something like that. You always try to spin it as a positive. Don't just be like, well, my student teaching was horrible and I cried every day. And I dealt with it by crying, because you're probably not getting the job. But yeah, whatever they are asking that's negative, they just want to see how you grew from it and how you can spin it into a positive, or not even necessarily a positive, but a learning experience. Number four, how do you feel about having select ensembles? So basically asking if I believe only students who are good at singing should be in the choirs, etc. And my opinion to that was that everyone can learn how to sing and everyone should have the opportunity to sing. I'm not against select ensembles if they're already built into the program. I am very much pro moving on with those, but I do think there should be some sort of choral opportunity, band opportunity, whatever, for every student to be involved in. Number five, if we ask someone you worked for, how would they describe your attendance? I was lucky because I could say I have pretty much perfect attendance. All through grade school, I had perfect attendance. All through college, I missed like 1 day a semester. I'm sort of like a dork that way. Personally, this school year, I have missed 0 days, not for personal days or sick days. So just, they might ask you about your attendance, and don't lie if you had like a prolonged sickness or if your attendance could have been better. Just don't throw yourself under the bus and be like, I miss a lot of school. But also don't lie and be like, I'm never absent. Because if they call an employer and they say, well, they have a lot of absences, not only do you have a lot of absences, but also now you're a liar. So just be careful with that one. Number six, what is the schedule of a typical rehearsal? So I think this was for a choral interview, and I pretty much just said some sort of warm-up activity, and usually, depending on the amount of time, some small sight reading activity, and then going into whatever we need to rehearse. And yeah, that's, self-explanatory. Number eight, this is for music people, but how can you get parents involved in your program? I remember struggling to come up with answers for this, and I was just honest with them. I was like, I'm gonna be honest, the places I student taught and most of the places where I did my cooperative teaching pre-service before student teaching, I've never really worked in buildings where there has been a lot of parent involvement, because they're typically low SES schools that I was working at, and those parents usually work jobs where they can't, miss work, they can't call off, they can't volunteer and be at school as much as parents who stay at home or work from home or whatever that may be. So I was honest that I was like, I haven't witnessed a lot of parent involvement, but then I shot some ideas at them, such as have like a parent info night where parents can come in and the students can perform with them, or have a night where parents come in and learn some music with their students just for fun. And an example that you could use, at my old building that I taught at, we had a parent night where they came in and they went to like 4 different sessions with their child. They got dinner provided, providing food, always the way to go, and they got to learn like 4 different skills with their kid. So fun things like that to get the parents interested in coming. Always hosted in the evening if you have low parent involvement, because evenings usually a little bit better for parents who work during the day. And yeah, just whatever ideas you can come up with. You might have better ones than I do, but I don't know, it's just my reality. But I also made sure to mention that just because parents aren't physically involved in the program doesn't mean that they don't care about what's going on. So it's really important to send home information to the parents, not always through the students either, because if you send home papers, that doesn't mean it's necessarily getting home. So I'm a big fan of things like Schoology, we use that in my district now, or things like Remind 101 to keep the parents up to date, because they might be working 80 hours a week and they can't call off and they can't come to our concerts, but that doesn't mean they don't care about their kid, and that doesn't mean they want to be involved. So just hone in on the fact that if parents aren't involved, you would still want to involve them through communication. Number 9, how do you handle discipline in your classroom? So for this one, I was lucky because I had already started my discipline management system, which I have a whole video on that I can link in the description below. I had started it with student teaching. So I was able in my interviews to say, well, I started this management system in student teaching and it's working with grades 3 to 12. So I would probably continue that system and add it to whatever's in place with the school. So just think about how you would handle discipline and just have some sort of plan of action. Never go in and say, well, I don't, like, discipline is really important. If you don't have discipline in your classroom, your students just aren't learning as much, and I'm sorry, that's the truth. So it's really important to show that you have thought about discipline and that you're prepared for that. Number 10, this is a question for the urban interviews I did, and it was, what experience do you have working in urban environments, and how do they compare to your own experiences? Which I thought was a really good question, because it's like, what experience do you have working, and also where did you come from and how does that relate? I thought that was just a good question. So that's obviously personal. I talked about my own experiences. You would have your own experiences, but maybe if you're interviewing for something that's rural, be prepared to ask that question or answer that question also, because rural schools also have their own little set of problems, and suburban schools do too, but I don't think this question would probably come up in a suburban setting. And as far as my own experiences, me telling you that isn't going to help you, so moving on. Number 11, what are 3 qualities all teachers need to have? I think, so I'll list off a few that I think would be good answers. Patience, kindness, respect, adaptability, enthusiasm, hard work, discipline, things like that. Like just qualities that would make us good people in general, but also are just really important in the classroom. And explaining why you think those 3 qualities matter, because if they ask you the 3 qualities and you don't explain why, they're probably gonna follow up with why. Sorry, the angle probably just changed because my memory card filled up, but that's okay because we're almost done. Number 12, what is a situation where you were overbooked and had to prioritize your commitments? I was shook when I was asked that because I've always been someone who overbooks themselves. So I'm just honest. I said, honestly, I'm someone who overbooks myself. I said last semester before student teaching, I was taking 22 credits and I was in this organization, this organization, this organization, this organization, blah, 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 blah. I said, you really just have to focus on what responsibilities are going to be most conducive to you in the future, but as long as you're organized and have good time management, then you're able to do more. I don't know, I think that's like what I said, but I mean, I'm still way overbooked. So number 13, what is the biggest struggle you will face as a teacher? I don't know what I said for that, but I guess as a new teacher, the biggest struggle would be understanding like the school and the district and all the rituals and becoming a part of the community. Not that it's a struggle to become a part of the community, but understanding your place in the community and stuff, because pretty much my discipline plan and my lessons, they work for any classroom with some modification, but becoming a part of a community takes longer and needs a lot more investment, honestly. Number 14 is a pretty repetitive question from one I've already answered, but it was, what is a personal or work conflict you've dealt with in the past year and how did you overcome it? I don't remember what I said, but I probably just reiterated that one issue that I had with the leadership role, or just maybe being involved in too many things. I don't know. There really wasn't like a lot of drama that I dealt with at school or anything. One thing that happened was during student teaching, they cut our musical like 2 weeks before we were about to run it. So that was a problem, and we overcame it by providing support for the students who were involved and helping them sort of like almost grieve the musical because it was rough. Oh my gosh, I've moved my camera so many times now, I'm sorry. Okay, number 15. What is a situation in which you've dealt with someone you didn't get along with or who didn't like you? Once again, I don't know what I said, but I was in a lot of like leadership roles. I've said this like 15 times, but I was in a lot of leadership roles in college, and people didn't like that I told them what to do, but it was part of the role, so it sort of forced me to grow and stop caring as much about what others think while still being respectful to their feelings. So I probably just elaborated on that. Number 16, discuss a way in which you've incorporated data into the classroom. Yes, data questions on music teacher interviews are very common, so just think of ways that you've done it for EdTPA and you'll be good. Alpha change. Those are my Blu-ray glasses. I guess I'll link them down below because otherwise you guys are going to ask and I love you for it. But anyways, the last question, describe the understanding of the demographics of our district. It's really important to know what kind of district you're interviewing at, because I had another district that didn't have interesting demographics. They were like 99% Caucasian, but they asked me, it was the interview with the superintendent, which first off, weird for a first interview, that's interesting. And they asked me, how would you describe our district to someone who asked you about it? Or like something very vague like that. And I had not done a lot of research on the district because I wasn't super interested in getting the job, which was my fault because I was sort of like, and I said like very basic stuff, but I wish I would have known more about like their OMEA records or like performance groups or like things that I might be involved in the future, you know. So do a lot of research on the districts you're interviewing for, but it's okay to just be yourself. Don't worry, take a deep breath. Someone will want you. You have a lot of value to add somewhere, and I promise you, you will find the perfect job for you. And if you don't, you can substitute teach. Like, there's nothing wrong with taking a semester or a year off to substitute teach. I know a couple people who have found their dream job through long-term sub positions. So whatever you end up in, it'll be the perfect fit for you, I promise. And I really appreciate you letting me give you any sort of advice. Hopefully some of this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if there's anything I can expand on, or if you'd like me to do like a teacher interview outfit lookbook or any other teacher interview stuff. I have a lot of other stuff from this presentation about like what to expect the first day and like different kinds of districts you could work in, or like different kinds of demographic situations to work in and stuff like that. So if any of that interests you, let me know in the comments. If you like this, give it a thumbs up so it can hopefully reach more incoming teachers or teachers who are looking for a new job and just want to brush up on their interview skills. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my other content, my teaching vlogs or my day in the life vlogs or any other teacher interview stuff that's going to come up in this playlist. So I really appreciate you guys for watching, and I hope you're having a fabulous day wherever you are. Bye.